In the next hour on Trial Story,
I heard 2 shots.
a grandmother is murdered by the side of the road.
He executed her for $7,000.
The DA says a cop did it and should die in the electric chair.
He used his position to gain the trust of the victim.
But the defense claims Mike Chappell fell victim to a rush to judgment. In the next hour on Trial Story, from opening statements to the verdict, the murder of Emogene. Is a cop to blame?
Georgia Interstate 85 takes you into the heart of Gwinnett County, just 30 miles from downtown Atlanta, but a world away. This land once belonged to Creek and Cherokee Indians. Today, nearly 500,000 people live in this community of one-street towns, strip malls, and the annual Gwinnett County Livestock Show and Fair. Folks here brag about the low crime rate. Just 6 murders in 1994, 11 in 95. If there was trouble, citizens trusted the Gwinnett police to protect them, until a startling crime rocked the county. It was April 15, 1993. A ruthless storm raged across north-central Georgia. Around 9:45,
I heard 2 shots.
a 53-year-old grandmother was dead.
We went down to look and seen it. You know, it was bad.
Emogene Bertha Thompson was found slumped behind the steering wheel in the parking lot at Gwinnco Muffler. The car's front tire was flat.
She had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head.
She was a good woman. She's a good neighbor. And it's just a shame. It really is.
Her purse, which was believed to have contained a large amount of money, was missing.
Missing was all that remained of Emogene Thompson's inheritance, $7,000, which she carried with her in $100 bills.
About 2.5 weeks prior to her death, her trailer was broken into.
A neighbor of Thompson's here in Sugar Hill gave police a lead. Another $7,000 of her inheritance had been stolen from her mobile home the month before.
911. What's the problem? The problem is I have had some things taken from my home. What's your name? Emogene Thompson. Emogene? Uh-huh.
And Michael Chappell came over to get the report on the money that was stolen.
For Michael Chappell, an 8-year veteran of the Gwinnett County Police Force, it was a routine call. After Thompson's death, Chappell worked the roadblock police set up to track down witnesses.
Any cars that might have been parked at Gwinnco Muffler, anybody broken down in that area, anything like that.
4 days later, police got a break.
Yesterday, we had a witness who saw that police officer, at the door and the window of that car, and that witness has positively identified Officer Chappell from a photo lineup.
The Miranda warning that Mike Chappell had read to suspects before arresting them was now read to him.
It was not me.
2 of Chappell's fellow officers interviewed him for 5.5 hours. At 9 in the morning of April 24th, 1993, Mike Chappell was arrested for the murder and robbery of the woman he had been sent to help.
I think virtually everybody felt devastated, the fact that one of our own could be involved in such a thing.
A member of Gwinnett's elite SWAT team, Chappell received 26 letters of commendation during his career.
He's just all-American guys. The whole family's in law enforcement. Like I said, I still don't believe it.
You put your trust totally in a police to help you, and you've always been raised to respect the police, and it just comes as a big shock.
No one was more shocked than Danny Porter, Gwinnett County's district attorney.
I was one of the people who taught him courtroom demeanor on how to testify. Chappell brought shame to those of us who were involved in the law enforcement community. He betrayed a trust.
Chappell's attorney, Johnny Ray Moore.
We feel like really believe the police did not do an adequate investigation. They never interviewed many of the suspects. They never They never interviewed the witnesses that they should have at the time.
Michael Chappell executed Emma Thompson for $7,000.
And for that, Porter will now seek the maximum penalty, death.
I sincerely believe that he's not guilty.
Elizabeth Vila Rogan has defended 20 men facing the death penalty since graduating from law school.
In 10 years of being a defense attorney, there have been very, very few clients whom I've represented, death penalty or otherwise, whom I didn't believe were guilty. Mike is different. I have never entertained a thought in my mind that he was guilty.
When he took the oath of office, Mike Chappell promised to uphold and defend the United States Constitution and the laws of Georgia. Well, now he faces the law he once enforced, accused of robbing and murdering a defenseless grandmother. Did Mike Chappell lure Emogene Thompson to the Gwinnco Muffler Shop and then shoot her twice for $7,000? Or in a rush to judgment, did police arrest the wrong man? Over the course of the next hour, a Georgia jury must decide whether or not there is enough evidence to convict Michael Chappell of murder and other charges. And if they do convict, then they must consider the ultimate punishment, death by electrocution.
Now, this is case number 93B1818-6, out of the state of Georgia versus Michael Harold Chappell.
The trial opens here at the county courthouse in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Chappell, now 34, has been in jail for 2.5 years, roughly a quarter of his son and daughter's lives. His supporters pack an entire row and will during the 18-day trial.
Mike's family is extremely devoted to him. They feel like he's going to be vindicated. I don't know what's going to happen if he's not.
Dolores Burel was Emogene Thompson's best friend.
We feel like nobody should die like that, and we're trying to accept it, hoping the trial will help us accept that Jean is gone.
No juror should read, listen to, or view any news report concerning this case.
The Honorable Fred Bishop presides over his first death penalty case. He's sequestered the jury and doesn't want to waste their time. Court will be held Monday through Friday, all day Saturday, and on Labor Day.
Mr. Porter, you wish to make an opening statement?
The judge was pushing us hard.
The burden rests on the state to prove that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the charges of malice murder, felony murder, armed robbery, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. And we intend to present evidence to you over the next few days that will in fact prove that Michael Harold Chappell is guilty.
Speaking on Mike Chappell's behalf is Johnny Moore.
The truth is, this case was built up from the beginning on probabilities, suspicion, thinks, and guesses.
Call your first witness, Mr. Porter.
Tyrone Smith and Joe Byers discovered Emogene Thompson's body.
As I walked to the vehicle, I'd seen that someone was slumped over in the seat. And I also, at that time, seen blood on the right arm and hand.
Could you raise your right hand? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I affirm.
The Gwinnett County medical examiner tells jurors what killed Emogene Thompson.
There were 2 shots. One is in the back of the head, and one is on the left side of her neck below the ear.
Next, witnesses who drove past the muffler shop around the time that Thompson died describe what they saw.
I saw a Gwinnett County police car sitting there.
The interior light was on in the car, and I could see that there was a white male with dark colored hair.
Can you describe what that officer looked like?
From what I could see, Caucasian male. Of course, he was wearing a rain suit and rain hat. Pretty good-sized gentleman, 6 feet maybe.
William Hutchings lives a half a mile from the murder scene. And on the night in question, he was watching the storm through an open window.
At any time during that night, did you hear anything?
Well, I heard 2 shots.
By clapping your hands, could you demonstrate the time period between them?
The first shot, and then probably a couple of hand claps.
So they were spaced about as fast as you just clapped your hands?
That's right.
Did you make any comment when you heard the shots?
Yeah, sure did.
And can you tell us what that was?
Well, after the first shot, I said, shoot him again.
Sir, if you'll take a stand up here, please.
Carl Kauter recalls passing Gwinnco between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. Minutes later, he says a police car pulled beside him on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard.
You see the man in court today that you identified from the photographic lineup and that you saw driving the patrol car on April the 15th of 1993.
Yes, sir.
Could you point him out for the jury, please? Your Honor, if the record could reflect that Mr. Kauter has identified the defendant, Michael Chappell.
After the years of sitting in jail waiting for trial, he had to look over documents and things. He became aware that most of the witnesses had seen a yellow car, which matched the spare car.
Chappell had made an important discovery. In deposition, some of the witnesses said the patrol car they had seen was an older, square-cornered model with a yellow stripe, like the precinct's spare car. It's a distinction Johnny Moore brings out on cross-examination.
Now, you described the car as an older square style, is that correct?
Yeah.
Chappell drove a 1992 Ford Crown Victoria. It's a newer car with rounded corners and a blue stripe. The patrol car's exterior may be in question, but prosecutors say evidence found inside, which they will introduce later, points squarely to the defendant. So far, Danny Porter has presented evidence that he says places Mike Chappell at the murder scene. Now he tries to establish a motive.
There was a need. I mean, clearly Chappell was not a rich man. Clearly he was living right on the edge of his salary and his wife's money, whatever that was.
State call officer Jack Dudley.
The state calls witnesses familiar with Chappell's finances. Jack Dudley loaned him $1,400 2.5 months before the murder.
Has he repaid any of that money to date?
No.
But on cross-examination, Elizabeth Rogan points out that the terms of the loan were 90 to 120 days.
I have been troubled by the motive issue from the very beginning.
Raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth.
5 days before Thompson's death, Chappell met with his accountant.
Full name?
John Scott Spearman.
He says Chappell was about to be audited by the IRS.
As well as I remember, the IRS notice stated that if we could not prove any of the deductions, that the extra tax would be approximately $4,000.
They selectively picked portions of the financial evidence to present to the jury, and then I would have to come back in cross-examination and give the jury the big picture. And this was a tax return that you had prepared and had satisfied yourself was supportable by the documentation you had seen.
Yes.
And in fact, you told Mike that this was nothing to worry about.
That's correct.
The focus moves to Chappell's personal checking account, which he kept here at People's Bank.
Mr. Henderson, if you'll take a stand up here, please.
A bank manager reviews Chappell's balance for the jury.
Does it show what the balance of this commercial account was on December 31st of 1992?
The account was overdrawn 19 cents.
What was the balance of this account on March 11th of 1993?
It was overdrawn $3.42.
That was before the murder. But after?
Yes, there was a deposit of $475. There was a deposit of $335. A deposit of $503.
Like everyone else, I think he wanted more.
Everybody liked Jean. She always made everybody happy when she walked in the room. She smiled.
Emogene Bertha Ashworth Thompson was born in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and never left. After high school, she married and had a son, Michael. She divorced and lived with her son in this single-wide trailer. For Emogene Thompson, life was hard.
Every time she looked like she was going to have something, it was taken away from her.
In 1992, Thompson inherited $25,000. She spent $11,000, but had plans for the rest.
She had a granddaughter that she loved very much. And her son, Michael, she loved very much. And she was looking to have a home for them, to have something that they could be proud of.
But the month before she died, $7,000 disappeared.
What's the problem? Oh, the problem is I have had some money taken from my home.
Officer Mike Chappell responded to the call.
I told her at the time that somebody who knew where the money was took half the money, and odds are it was going to be Mike, her son.
Thompson, you'll be seated up here on the witness stand, please.
Thompson's son was at home when Chappell arrived.
Did he confront you with thinking that you did?
Yes.
Did he actually ask you if you did?
Yes.
What did you say?
No.
Basically just told me that, well, she didn't want to press charges against him. She just wanted him scared.
Chappell asked Michael Thompson to step outside.
I looked through the window in the door.
And what did you see?
My mother showing him the money that was left.
She had an envelope in her purse that had, well, soon to be the rest of the money. It was just a big pile of money.
Michael, did you steal the money?
No.
Why not?
I wouldn't have to. My mother would have given me anything. All I had to do was ask for it.
Good morning, Mr. Thompson.
Good morning.
I'm Elizabeth Rogan. We've met beforehand.
Rogan doesn't buy Thompson's story.
Mr. Thompson, you actually had taken some of that money previously, hadn't you?
Yes.
About $400 of it.
Yes.
You had found out where it was hidden and taken it.
Yes.
And there's more Rogan wants the jury to know about Thompson's son, like how he spent the money from his mother's insurance policy after her death.
Shortly after you received the money, you purchased a Corvette automobile, didn't you?
Yes.
You paid for it in cash?
Yes.
And you went on a cruise?
Yes.
To the Caribbean or Mexico?
Mexico.
Mexico. You never paid for your mother's funeral, though, did you, Mr. Thompson?
No.
In fact, you were sued by the funeral home
Yes.
for that unpaid funeral.
Yes.
Prosecutors push ahead, asking Judge Bishop to allow hearsay testimony by the victim's friends about a meeting she was to have with the defendant the night she died. Hearsay is what a witness hears someone else say, rather than what he hears or sees himself. And it's usually not admitted in court, but there are some exceptions. For example, in Georgia, it can be admissible if the speaker is dead.
It was critical that the state get some of those statements in to tie up the connection between Chappell and the victim.
Judge Bishop agrees.
State call Ms. Marsha Arnold.
Marsha Arnold used to work with Thompson at a bomb factory. Now she tells the jury what Thompson allegedly said about a rendezvous with Mike Chappell.
She said she was going to get with him and they was going to compare serial numbers. That he had had a $100 bill in a wrapper and he wanted to compare serial numbers.
Miss Chance, you'll come up and take the witness stand, please.
Virginia Chance worked with Thompson inspecting contact lenses on the night shift. She spoke to her on April 13th, 2 days before Thompson died.
She said that he had found her and told her that some of the money had surfaced along with wrappers and they wanted to compare serial numbers.
Dolores Burel says she spoke to Thompson 6 times in the hours before her friend died.
When you talked to Emogene Thompson on Thursday, April the 15th, did she tell you at any point in time that she was expecting a phone call from Officer Chappell?
Yes, sir.
Did she tell you what she was going to be doing with the money that she still had at home that night?
The money she had with her, she was taking it with her to pair the seal numbers on those bills to what the bill or the money that he had. They were going to compare the seal numbers together.
The full context of those conversations got translated differently to her friends, who in the aftermath of her homicide were groping for some way to explain how this had happened to her. And I submit that they formulated this story, or the story sort of grew the more they said it to each other.
The evidence shows that on April the 15th of 1993, Mike Chappell lured Emogene Thompson to the Gwinnco Muffler, shot her twice with a Charter Arms .38 caliber pistol, stole approximately $7,000, and then within a week was spending it for his own enjoyment.
He got the highest price car wash that we offer.
Prosecutors say Mike Chappell's spending spree started here at the Sunshine Car Wash in Lawrenceville.
He gave me a $100 bill.
Chappell also bought T-shirts for the gym he owned, Iron World, now closed.
He paid for it with 6 $100 bills.
And he bailed a friend of his wife Erin's out of jail.
How did he post that bond?
Cash.
Aaron Chappell was also seen carrying a large amount of cash just after the murder.
Would you describe the money that was in the envelope?
It was between a quarter and a half-inch stick. I would say closer to a quarter-inch stick. New $100 bills.
Next, prosecutors call Mike Chappell's fellow officers.
We felt like we had reached the point where we had to confront him and to question him.
8 days after Thompson's death, they made the agonizing decision to investigate one of their own.
If you raise your right hand and repeat after me.
In 1984, Mike Chappell swore to protect the liberties and lives of Gwinnett County citizens.
In here, Mike was really nice, very nice person. Kids loved Mike.
In 1987, Chappell was assigned here to the Northside Precinct in northern Gwinnett County. In 1993, Chappell broke his oath as a police officer, according to Gwinnett's district attorney, Danny Porter.
He used his position to gain the trust of the victim. He used his position to lure her to an area that she might not have otherwise felt safe.
And what do you call that?
Murder.
Go ahead, please. The state's case takes a new turn. Prosecutors play portions of Mike Chappell's interrogation.
You are looking at a murder trial.
Captain Latty investigated Thompson's murder. He found she had been robbed the month before she died.
We began to try to locate that burglary report and could not find one. When we couldn't find the incident report pertaining to the burglary, then we checked other records, dispatch cards and that type of thing. We discovered it was Mike Chappell.
Why didn't Chappell file a report?
Slackness on my behalf.
They rushed and made their pick and said, this is who we're going to blame it on. And now they expect the district attorney to carry through with it.
At the time he was brought into the headquarters up there, the decision had already been made to arrest him, hadn't it?
It depended on what took place during the interview.
There's got to be some other explanation. He was not free to leave at that point, was he?
Had he refused the interview at that point or refused to cooperate, no, he would not have been allowed to leave.
Chappell got every break a defendant could get. He got every break. He got more doubt, he got more questions than any murder defendant I think I've ever seen.
I told you everything I know. Everything.
Chappell insists he was at the Northside Precinct firehouse at 9:45 when prosecutors say the murder occurred.
They didn't account for me.
They are Chappell's friends on the force. But when called to the stand, what they say does not help the defendant.
Did Chappell at some point in time get up to leave the precinct?
Yes, he did.
Or the fire station, I'm sorry. Do you know what time that was?
The best I recall, it was in the area between 20 after 9 and 9:30.
The truth is that they don't know where the heck you were.
Do you recall seeing Officer Chappell again that night?
Not after I left the parking lot, no.
Now, state's attorneys try to link physical evidence collected at the crime scene to Mike Chappell.
Mr. Fite, if you'll take the witness stand up here, Mr. Smeal will administer the oath.
The gun that killed Emogene Thompson has never been found. However, a state firearms expert tested the bullets that killed her.
The bullets were probably fired from a Charter Arms or an RG-38 or 357 Magnum revolver.
Chappell told officers he owned 4 guns, a deer rifle, 2 handguns, and a .22 automatic. But a fellow officer remembers Chappell had another gun.
Mike observed me and he said, "Ray Bob, what's the pea shooter you have on your hip?"
And what did you respond?
I said, "Well, it's a Charter Arms 38. I said, "But don't knock it. It's an accurate shooting little gun."
Did he have any response to that?
Yes, he did. He said, "Yes, I know I have one."
When police investigators searched Chappell's locker, they found this rain slicker splattered with blood.
There is a high-velocity blood spatter pattern on the right arm and right chest area of this rain gear.
But on cross-examination, Johnny Moore points out that just about anything could have caused the spatter.
If a police officer in the line of duty, or perhaps not in the line of duty, had worn a raincoat like this, and he took a handgun and shot a deer that had been rolled by a car to put it out its pain, or a dog or something like that, would you get the same kind of pattern?
Probably so.
And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference by looking at it?
I wouldn't, no, sir.
Detective B.J. Tkacik searched Mike Chappell's gym. Among other things, Tkacik found a pocket knife, which prosecutors say could be the knife used to slash Thompson's front tire. In cross-examining Tkacik, Johnny Moore offers the jury another potential suspect, a fellow officer named J.P. Morgan.
You were the officer in charge of the investigation into J.P. Morgan's death, weren't you?
Yes, sir. Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. This is not relevant.
Morgan committed suicide 3 weeks after Emogene Thompson died.
We wanted to raise the specter with J.P. Morgan's suicide that something mysterious was going on.
While investigating Morgan's suicide, police discovered evidence was missing from the precinct, and that prompted the Gwinnett police to investigate their fellow officers. This report details some alarming findings relating to the Chappell case, but the report will not be released until after the trial.
If the police had done a thorough investigation, they would have been able to come to this jury and say, J.P. Morgan didn't have anything to do with it because here's what he was, here's what he was doing, here's what was going on. Instead, they came to this jury and the police said, J.P. Morgan wasn't involved. Trust us, we cleared him, but we're not going to tell you how.
I thought that was obscene. I thought it was wrong. I thought it was misleading to the jury.
Prosecutors have saved the most damning evidence against Chappell for last. Blood was found on the front seat of Chappell's patrol car.
It was split right down the middle like this.
Keith Goff, a forensic serologist for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, says the blood in Chappell's car matches the blood of Emogene Thompson.
For the probe MS1, I found that there was a match between the blood sample that was labeled Emma Thompson and the blood stain from the car seat.
All told, Goff says 6 blood samples from the car seat matched Thompson's blood. How certain is he?
I found that no more than 1 in 10 billion individuals in the black or the Caucasian population would exhibit the banding pattern which is shared between the blood stain from the car seat and Emma Thompson.
On cross-examination, Johnny Moore attacks Goff's decision not to test the blood on Chappell's raincoat.
I think it was decided not to pursue the PCR analysis, mainly since we already had a result on the car seat.
That's all the questions I have right now.
Now, after more than 8 days of testimony and more witnesses than the state of California called in the O.J. Simpson trial, the state rests.
Mike was he was a good police officer. He was a bit of a cowboy type, very daring, very brave.
At 6'4", 270 pounds, Mike earned the nickname Animal Chappell. Now, on the 9th day of the trial, Elizabeth Rogan presents a defense for the man nearly twice her size.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
She calls firefighters who were on duty here at the Northside Precinct the night that Emogene Thompson was killed. Several men say they saw Chappell, who had stopped by to wait out the storm.
About 9:30, the officers came to the station, and between that time and the time that the movie went off, Officer Chappell got up and put his raincoat on and walked out the door.
What time did Chappell leave? Danny Porter tries to find out by introducing the evening television listings for April 15th, 1993.
What time did it begin?
8 p.m.
And what time did it end, according to the time slot?
9:30 p.m.
What was the name of that movie, Mr. Pierce?
A Time to Die.
Do you recall what it was about?
Yes, it was about some bad cops.
There were 2 incidents in the week before the murder where Mike had access to a lot more money a lot more easily than this $7,000. Would you raise your right hand, please?
One of those incidents involved Mike's friend, Dana Blount, says once Chappell came to her office when a cashier was counting the day's receipts.
It was close to 10,000 is what it looked like, because she had it stacked up. She had her 20s here, 100s here, her 5s and her 10s, you know. She had everything stacked out.
Okay. And it was in cash?
Right. Those cash and checks.
And Mr. Chappell was, to your knowledge, able to see the cash on the table?
I don't think the fact that he didn't steal from everybody he knew changes the fact that he stole from Emogene Thompson.
Rogan tries now to squelch the state's theory that Mike Chappell killed for
Spell
money.
your last name for the record, please.
Ian Ratner.
She calls a forensic accountant to review Chappell's bank accounts for the jury.
Did you notice any significant change in the daily balance, particularly in April of 1993, in this account?
No.
Prosecutor Scott Smeal cross-examines him.
Mr. Ratner, if the evidence in this case showed beyond a reasonable doubt that Michael Chappell murdered a woman on April the 15th, 1993, at approximately 9:45 p.m., and stole approximately $7,000, and he chose not to deposit that money in his bank account, or only chose to deposit a portion of that money in the bank account, is that something that would be reflected in these charts?
No.
I have no further questions.
The hardest piece of evidence to overcome in our case was the blood in the patrol car.
I'm an associate professor in the School of Biology at Georgia Tech.
Dr. Jung Choi says he has detected a problem with the state's results, called partial digestion.
Partial digestion I've seen in my lab as a result of either contamination of the DNA sample with some chemical or careless lab procedures.
He said that the crime lab generally does good work. He's examined over 30 of their cases, and he rarely testifies because he generally agrees with them, and he says in this particular case that despite their best efforts, the test simply did not work.
That's a recognized phenomenon that doesn't invalidate the results, but it does cause a complication to us in presenting it to a jury.
The defense calls Michael Chappell to the stand. Mike has been like a bubble waiting to burst for 2.5 years. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
He wanted to have his moment, to tell his story.
He begins with his first meeting with the victim.
I told her, I said, ma'am, first off, nobody steals half of $14,000 from your hiding spot, puts it back, and then that's just not done. Took the money. I said, did Mike take the money? And she just nodded her head. And I said, well, I explained to her her options.
Forget about it or prosecute, Mike says he told her, but he says that Thompson was hesitant to press charges.
I started writing the report, and it was either put in my briefcase or my clipboard, and that's the last I saw of it. For whatever reason, it didn't get turned in.
Rogan steers her client to the night of the murder.
About what time did you arrive at the fire station?
I would say about 8:30. The movie that was on the broadcast, not the cable, Cinemax, HBO, or anything else, it was broadcast. It went off a little before 10. The movie went off. I got up, put on my raincoat, and started out the door.
Mike, did you see Emogene Thompson on the night of April 15th, 1993?
No, I did not.
Did you rob Emogene Thompson of the money that had been left in her trailer following the burglary?
No, I did not.
Did you kill Emogene Thompson?
No, I did not.
That's all I have for Mr. Chappell this time.
Proceed when you're ready, Mr. Porter.
Now, Mike Chappell is cross-examined by the man who taught him how to testify.
Y'all went to the fire station about 8:30, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you say you left at 10?
I say I left at 10.
Sergeant Stone is mistaken.
He's mistaken, yes.
Firefighter Pierce is mistaken.
He's mistaken.
And what of Chappell's alleged spending spree?
Where'd the $100 bill for the car wash come from?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You didn't pay with $100?
No, I didn't.
So Miss Heath...
Actually, I don't recall paying with a $100 bill.
Was it so common for you to carry $100 bills that you can't remember where you got $100?
Well, I know where I got it from. You won't let me answer.
What's the source?
The source is possibly 2 or 3 traveler's checks and one from the gym or a personal check. Somebody bought a $100 3-month membership.
Where are the traveler's checks?
You have to ask the People's Bank. We don't have any more.
And what about the rain slicker?
How did the human blood get on?
I can give you my opinion.
All right.
I would say that it would one of several places. They work in frequent car wrecks like we do, wearing it around people that are injured, wearing it on animal destruction calls, or just wearing it in general.
Where would the human blood come
From humans?
Yeah.
From humans.
Then Porter asks about the blood found on the front seat of his patrol car.
So do you have any plausible, reasonable explanation to give this jury of why Emogene Thompson's blood was in your patrol car, other than the fact that it transferred from the purse that you took out of her car after you shot her?
I have no plausible reason why Emogene Thompson's blood would be in my car if it was in fact her blood.
I don't have any other questions.
On redirect examination, Elizabeth Rogan suggests that blood could have been planted.
Do you have any idea what happened to your car or the keys to your car during the subsequent 6 days before the luminol test revealed the presence of blood in your car?
Only what I've read in reports and seen here in court.
That's all I have.
Re-cross-examination.
So if the Gwinnett County Police needed a scapegoat of all the 300 officers, why you?
Because the mistakes had already been made.
But why you?
I don't know.
Mr. Porter, you wish to argue on behalf of the state?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
After 13 days of testimony and 95 witnesses, the Gwinnett County District Attorney begins his summation.
He lured her to the Gwinnco Muffler on the pretense of continuing to work her case. He was running the boo. And he got her out there at about 9:30 or 9:40 that night. And with 2 shots, he ended her life.
The stakes are Mike Chappell's life.
The state has not carried their burden and has not proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm asking you to make that hard choice and tell the police that you will not tolerate the kind of shoddy investigation, the kind of evidence that's been brought to you in this case, and to return a verdict of not guilty, which speaks the truth.
On the night of April the 15th, in the time it took Mr. Hutchings to say, "Shoot her again," Michael Chappell reduced this to this.
I wanted to talk about what Emogene Thompson's last thoughts must have been like as she turned to get her money, thinking, gee, Officer Mike is here to help me. And then the first bullet crashed through her brain.
This is what demands the verdict that speaks the truth. This is what demands the verdict that has the word justice written on it. This is what demands the verdict of guilt. Thank you.
The defendant in this case is
Judge Bishop explains the law to the jury.
Murder, felony murder, armed robbery, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime.
Now, the waiting begins.
The waiting makes you wonder why you ever wanted to be a trial attorney. It's the worst part of the trial.
A full day passes.
Tense, anxious, hopeful.
The jury begins its 3rd full day of deliberating this morning.
I think it could very well be a hung jury.
Then, after 18 and a half hours,
I believe we have a verdict in the matter. As to count 1, murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty as charged. As to count 2, felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty as charged. As to count 3, armed robbery, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty as charged. As to count 4, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty as charged.
It's very hard to shift gears in front of the jury and retain any credibility. You've got to say, well, all right, he's guilty, but don't execute him.
You need to make a decision now that is even more difficult. You need to make a decision now as to whether Michael Chappell will live or will die.
In this century, the death penalty fight accelerated in 1972 when the U.S. Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. Coincidentally, it was a case from Gwinnett County that reinstated the death penalty in Georgia back in 1976. And the state legislature then set some guidelines for juries. Death would no longer be arbitrarily imposed, and the Supreme Court agreed. Now, those guidelines, the defendant's age and cruelty of the crime, among others, will be considered by this jury in deciding if Mike Chappell will live or die in the electric chair.
I am Mike's mother.
My job is to provide a reason for the jury to choose life over death.
Chappell's mother begs the jury to consider his children.
They could probably live with a life sentence. Their lives will never be the same. But if he's put to death, I know what death does to a person at an early age. I've had to live with it all my life. Don't make them go through what I went through, okay? I beg of you.
Chappell's brother, Gregg.
Gregg, you're aware of the jury's verdict in this case?
Yes, I am.
And are you aware of the decision that they have to make now about what sentence to impose as a result of their verdict?
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like to say to the jury with regard to the decision that they have to make?
Just don't take my brother from me.
This man had it all. He had everything. He had a family that loves him. He had children that love him. He was successful in his job. But yet, he was prepared and ready to commit a crime so cold-blooded, so callous, so uncaring, that it defies the imagination. That alone would justify you in imposing the ultimate penalty.
Until I meet someone who I just think is completely unredeemable, I do not believe it's a necessary or appropriate sentence, and so I'm opposed to it in every case.
Is Mike Chappell beyond redemption? Is he beyond all hope? Is he a worthless human being? Because unless you can find that he is, you should hesitate to vote to impose the ultimate, irreversible punishment. Life in prison will be punishment enough. Please choose life over death. Don't compound this tragedy any further. Thank you.
The next morning.
I believe we have a verdict. Is that correct?
The jury enters, and silence falls over the courtroom.
The verdict as to penalty is as follows. We, the jury, find the following statutory aggravating circumstance to exist beyond a reasonable doubt, and that is armed robbery. And notwithstanding the finding of the statutory aggravating circumstance that the defendant, Michael Harold Chappell, be sentenced to life imprisonment this 10th day of September, 1995, signed by the foreperson.
It's hard to view, in a situation like his, it's hard to view a life sentence as a victory, even though it was. It just, I don't think it felt that way to him.
He won't see the light of day if I have anything to do about it. Because I'll fight any parole consideration as long as I'm district attorney.
10 days after the verdict, Elizabeth Rogan received a letter from one of the alternate jurors.
It began and ended with his firm conviction that Mike is innocent. It's a kind of heartbreaking letter that you just say, oh, why couldn't you have been on our jury?
A week later, the Gwinnett County Police Department releases the Northside Precinct report. Mike Chappell is suspected of robbery in neighboring DeKalb County and another homicide and armed robbery in Gwinnett. The district attorney's office is investigating.